the average male professional hockey player is usually asked probing questions about getting pucks in deep or how the power play went. Do you ever get tired of having to answer the kinds of questions I've asked you today about all these bigger issues?
Mm-hmm. Definitely.
I don't know that people fully understand all that has gone into getting this league off the ground, both off the ice and on the ice. And now, here you are, professional hockey player, Sarah Nurse. How does that feel?
It's crazy to officially have that title and to be able to be a part of the inaugural season of the PWHL. It's kind of a roller coaster, and to be able to sit back and say, oh my gosh, I'm a professional hockey player, it's an honor.
Look at the faces, look at the support, look at all of it that you have fought and battled for on the shoulders of the past generation to the present, and all the young ones out there. They are looking at their future opportunities. Such an unbelievable moment. I've got chills.
I heard you being interviewed just before the league began, and you admitted you're kind of nervous.
Mm-hmm.
But now the puck has dropped. You've scored a really nice goal. How does it feel at this point?
At this point, we're in the thick of it. It's about hockey now. I think leading up to the PWHL starting for the last few years, it's been about so much more than hockey. It's been about the next generation. It's been about inspiring. It's been about bringing awareness to our game and what we do. And now it's about hockey. It's about the product. It's about what we bring and what we can showcase to the world. And so that, in another sense, is daunting, but it's exciting because the time's now and we finally have the opportunity to do that.
There's an interesting thing on the league's website. I don't think I've seen this on any other website for a professional sports league. It says join the movement. Mm-hmm. You know, it is a movement, right? Mm-hmm. And it sounds like you're very much aware of that.
For sure. I think people ask me all the time how to support women's sports, how to support women's hockey. And like it's not like a brain teaser or anything like that. It's how do you support the NHL? How do you support the NFL, the NBA? It's going to games, it's interacting on social media, it's watching it when it's on TV. Like it's the exact same thing. It's buying merchandise, it's doing all of those things. And so just because we are female professional athletes, like we're not rewriting the wheel here. It's exactly the same. And to support us, obviously we want to put out the best product possible and bring in the greatest community that we can.
You must have thought about this, the impact that even these first few weeks is having on 6, 7, 8-year-old girls who either are playing hockey or want to play hockey.
Yeah, the amount of times I've gotten, messages or gotten tagged on social media of how the gravity of what we've accomplished in the last year and in the last few weeks has been absolutely incredible. Like little girls being like, I can't believe that like I have a league to play in one day. Women who are in their 40s or 50s or 60s being like, I cannot believe you guys did this. I've always wanted to play hockey. That's all I wanted to do, but there were no opportunities for me. So it's been this full circle moment of young girls, older women, and also men and boys as well, who are really understanding. Like I get stopped at our practice facility all the time by boys, wanting to talk to me about hockey and talking about how cool it is that we have a professional league.
Yeah. Speaking of full circle, let's go back to the 6, 7, 8-year-old Sarah Nurse in Hamilton. Not that far away geographically, but it seems so far away in terms of your hockey journey. How did you choose hockey? How did you get involved?
I started skating when I was about 3 years old, and my dad, he always wanted to play hockey, but was never able to. He was a huge hockey fan, huge Toronto Maple Leafs fan. And so as soon as he could get me on the ice, he put me on skates. I had those little double blades, and we went out and skated at like a local pond together. And I was very natural at it. I took to it very easily, and I loved it. And so the natural progression from there was like figure skating or hockey. And my dad took that as an opportunity to put me in hockey. And that's where like I fell in love with the game. I loved playing the game so much. I definitely played other sports growing up, but I quickly learned throughout like my early teens that my skill set and what I was best at was hockey.
Yeah, and it's pretty clear as we visited your parents' place in Hamilton that he and your mom are incredibly proud of you. They've built basically a little museum, a little Sarah Nurse museum in Hamilton.
So this is the shrine to our kids where we keep all of their memorabilia, all the stuff they did. This is Sarah's shelf. We have, you know, her first 50-goal puck. There was her first international goal when she was playing U18 against Germany. Now this Barbie doll here is her Barbie doll that is made to look like her in her image. And this was the stick of the first Olympic goal. It's a bit surreal. It's not often you go in to buy a box of cereal and there's your kid on the box of cereal. So we went to a bunch of stores trying to find the Cheerios, the box of Cheerios. We finally found it in the Sobeys, so we went and we got about 4 boxes of them. Of course, we took pictures of ourselves in the Sobeys with the Cheerios boxes, so it was actually a pretty cool moment.
Oh, that was my first goal. That was my first goal at the Olympics. That was crazy. It was against Team USA, and I could not believe that it went in the back of the net.
Either could we.
When my parents first put me in hockey, they brought me to the closest arena, and that was with a boys hockey league. And so I was always one of the only girls. I remember seeing like a couple at the arena, but I was always one of the only girls. And I didn't realize that there were full teams of girls who played hockey until I was about 7 years old. And I saw Team Canada play at the Olympics in 2002. And I couldn't believe that they didn't have like one team, they had 2 teams, and they were playing for a gold medal, and they got to play on TV, which is crazy because I didn't see women playing sports on TV. And from there, it just sparked something in me that I was like, wow, that could be a really cool possibility. You know, I would love to play hockey on TV for Team Canada.
Canada wins the gold! I really can't explain how this feels to me right now. Finally bringing the gold medal home to the country where it belongs. And we deserve it. We represent our country with class and dignity, and every single girl on this team deserves this gold medal.
I feel like this is probably one of my favorite pages because this was like the first photo that I remember taking being around hockey with the little medals that I made during the Olympics in 2002 when I got to watch the girls for the first time.
So that 7-year-old in that picture, your grandmother took the photo with a Canadian flag and a gold medal that you had created after being inspired by the 2002 women's team in Salt Lake City. One day you'd be going to the Olympics as well, but before we get there, your career was kind of at a crossroads in 2017 when you didn't make the national team, and you wondered if maybe your elite hockey career was over.
Yeah, being left off of the roster for the 2017 World Championship team was devastating. I was pretty distraught after that because I thought that was my last shot. That was my last opportunity to prove to the people who were making decisions that I had the potential to be on that team. Like, it still kind of stings thinking about it, even though it all turned out for the best. But I came to that place, and I remember my dad just being like, just play hockey. You have you have 2 months left of your collegiate career. At that point, I was a senior at the University of Wisconsin, so I had 2 months left. He said, just play hockey. Go help your team win a national championship. And I ended up playing some of the best hockey that I've ever played in my career. And I was player of the month for January, February, March, I think, at Wisconsin. And I earned the opportunity to not play on that World Championship team, but to be given a shot to try out for the Olympic team. And had I not had that mindset shift after being released from that team, I don't think that I'd be here today.
You did make the Olympic team that went to South Korea in 2018, silver medal. 4 years later, you made the Canadian Olympic team, won a gold medal, and didn't just win a gold medal, but you set the record for the women's Olympic hockey tournament, most assists, most points.
Top scores! Nurse, second again.
thighs, the great Haley Wickenheiser.
So one line should be Sarah Nurse, member of what may be one of the greatest Canadian women's Olympic teams, right,
Yeah.
from that year.
Yeah.
Another line that's come out of that is Sarah Nurse, the first Black women's hockey player to win a gold medal at the Olympics. So first of all, in terms of terminology, I've seen you use both the word black and biracial to describe yourself. Which do you prefer?
I usually refer to myself as a biracial Black woman.
Okay.
So a little bit of a combination of it too. Just, I think it's important for me. There's so many levels of, Blackness. And for me, understanding that I have an inherent privilege just being a lighter skinned woman. And so I think it's very important for me to understand and exemplify that I may not necessarily go through some of the things that some of my darker sisters would.
Well, so let me ask you about that. Like, there are hockey players who have been, who are Black, who have dealt with some terrible racism. Willie O'Ree, for example, the pioneer, the first Black player in the NHL. To read his autobiography is to read about some nauseating examples of racism that he faced on the ice, in the stands, and it probably limited his career as well. Has race been an obstacle for you in your career?
I think for myself, growing up, we were always the only Black family in the arena. And so, like, I always joke around saying, like, I always knew where my dad was because I would just have to look out and he was the only Black man in all the white faces.
Yeah.
So definitely that was a little polarizing as a child. And then growing up with women's hockey, I remember somebody asking me a few years back if there was racism in women's hockey. And I was like, I'm not really sure. But then I took a look around and I was like, well, there are no other Black people. There are no Asian people. There are no Indigenous people. The first time I ever played with somebody who wasn't white was on the 2018 Olympic team, and that was with my teammate Bridget Lacquette. And so it was crazy because I was like, there's no diversity in the sport at all. And so to be able to see players like, Sophie Jakes and Soraya Tinker and Layla Edwards coming up and being, Black women playing on their respective national teams and in professional hockey is going to help change the game and going to help make the game more inviting and open and welcoming to everybody.
You may not have seen a lot of other faces that looked like yours when you were really young playing hockey, but you certainly saw a lot of elite athletes just in your family, right? I mean, your aunt, who is a basketball star at Syracuse, your cousins, Kia, a basketball star, professional player, Darnell, professional hockey player. So it sounds like a fantastic environment to achieve success. What about being a girl growing up in Hamilton playing hockey? Did you feel there were any obstacles there?
I think from a very young age, because Darnell and I are the exact same age, we played the same sport, and our paths always ran parallel to each other. And I always noticed how him and his career was spoken about versus mine. So we were both elite. We were both at the top of our age groups, our teams, our province, our country. And I remember whenever he was spoken about, it was like, well, he's going to make a living playing this. This is going to be his full-time career. He can 100% focus his time on this. Whereas me, it wasn't spoken about like that. It was spoken about, oh, you need to get an education because when you're done doing the little thing that you're doing, you're going to need something else to do. And so my career and me playing my sport wasn't taken as seriously as his was, but that was because there was no professional hockey for women. And the lack of opportunities was glaring to the people who I looked up to, the people around me, and they wanted to make sure that I had my things in order so that I could be as successful as possible outside of hockey.
Now, there was professional women's hockey before the current league, but it sounds like it wasn't that professional. I mean, can I ask, what were the salaries like in those leagues that came before the current league?
When I first started playing in the CWHL in 2018, 2019, I was paid $2,000, I believe my contract was. And then
$2,000 a game?
$2,000 a year. Yeah, $2,000 a year, with a possible bonus at the end.
Wow.
And maybe a couple thousand more.
So the difference between almost like an honorarium and what now I hope is a salary that people can actually live on.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. Look excited. A little cold, but you got your mittens on? Let's do it.
I can't imagine the burden of being a professional athlete. You have to be super fit, work on your skills, all the things you do there, but then you've taken on this completely different and additional role of being a spokesperson, whether it's talking about issues of race or gender. And this may not have happened, I guess, if you hadn't done an interview on the Sportsnet show, Tim and Sid, where they said, hey, you know what, we need you to go on the air and speak, even though you weren't the designated kind of speaker at the time. How did that change things for you?
Yeah, I will never forget that day with Tim and Sid, because that was the first time I'd really done anything on camera and used my own voice and told my own story. I remember being so nervous because I wasn't a designated speaker to speak after the CWHL folded. You know, we had people who were in place who had talking points who, you know, we're going to share our stories and our movement. And so when I got called upon, I was incredibly nervous. And I remember just thinking, like, just be honest and just be open and be yourself. For us, I think one of our biggest things is we're not treated as professional athletes. And it's tough when we get grouped into that bigger picture of professional hockey players, the NHL, those guys, because we're not treated like they are. One thing, we don't get compensated like they do. We don't expect to make millions of dollars, but I mean, it would be great if we had some livable wage that we were provided to play and to compete in our sport. We are taking that stand and saying that the current state of professional women's hockey is not what it needs to be. And so I think that by them saying that, we really want to prove to them that we're willing to stand for this and to stand for the next generation of female hockey players. We have an amazing product that we want to show the world, but unfortunately, under the current circumstances, we can't do that. You know, we have girls who work 9 to 5, and then we practice at 10 o'clock at night, right? And so we don't have the right resources in place for us to be performing at our best. And so we just want the opportunity to do that. We want to be able to have medical staff, support staff, strength conditioning coaches, things like that, so that we can be true professionals and we can put out the best product that we have to offer.
Canadian Olympian Sarah Nurse joining us in studio. You're welcome anytime. Yeah. Thank you very much for coming.
Being on with those guys, they were great. They really empowered me, but I was able to share my story and share my perspective. And it was the first time that it felt like it really appreciated that I was being vulnerable in that moment. And so it really empowered me to use my voice and to speak on different issues and topics and understand that it's okay. You're not always going to be right. People aren't always going to love what you have to say, but it's so important to be able to share and be open and honest.
And so you're playing at a smaller rink than, say, the Toronto Maple Leafs do. Ticket prices are a lot lower, but the season is sold out. You're on network television. The highlights are on Sportsnet and TSN. How are you feeling about where things are at right now?
I'm very proud to see the amount of media that's covering our league, because we've never seen that before. The numbers from our first game, I saw 2.9 million across Canadian broadcast networks, and that's like Olympic numbers. So that's like gold medal game numbers. And so the fact that there's that much interest and the fact that people know about it, because we played on TV before, but there's been no awareness. And so for me to be watching like Hockey Night in Canada the other day with my family, and like my face pops up saying Toronto's playing Montreal this week, I was like, oh, I forgot, amazing. But it's so cool to be able to see that, because we're in the forefront, we're front and center, and people have access to us like they've never had before.
From Hamilton, Ontario, with PWHL Toronto, number 20, Sarah Nurse.
100%, for sure, 100%, 100%.
I do 100%.
One of the interesting things about kind of the public persona you have is that on the one hand you play this sport that's rough and tumble and aggressive and there's body checking in this league, but at the same time you're not afraid to embrace this, I mean, can I say kind of very sort of feminine image on Instagram, for example. Like how do you balance that? What kind of image are you hoping to portray?
Yeah. I've always struggled with this because as a child, like, again, I played so many different sports, but I loved a dress. I loved playing with dolls. And so there was one time I walked into my hockey game at like 7 years old with a dress on and like my hockey stick slung over my shoulder. And that's just me. Like, that's how I've always been. And so I want to be the person that like 7-year-old Sarah could look up to and be like, oh my gosh, I could be like her, because I didn't have anybody to look up to in that lens. Playing sports, playing hockey, I was always taught that I had to be like brutal and like vicious, and I was like, that's just simply not me. On the ice, I'm a competitor, but off of the ice, these are my interests, and I think that that's okay. I think that femininity is a sliding scale. I think that my version of femininity is going to be different than, you know, the next woman or the next man's version of femininity. And I just want to allow everybody the space to understand that they can be who they want to be. I like hockey. It's not who I am. It's something that I do, but I can also like so many other things, and they can be combined. It's pretty awesome.
So speaking of blending these two worlds of hockey and femininity, you were a Barbie. Yeah.
I was, yeah. That was probably one of the coolest collaborations that I've ever done. When I was a girl, Barbies were my favorite. I remember it would be like my big Christmas present. I loved playing with Barbies. I carried them around everywhere with me. And, you know, hockey and Barbie don't really go together. And so for me, growing up and not understanding that and never ever seeing, you know, an athlete Barbie or a hockey playing Barbie, I didn't think that, you know, hockey players could be feminine, or that they could like dresses, or that they could like makeup and things like that. And so to be able to blend my two worlds together and have that little bit of representation and show young girls that if you want to play with a doll, you can play with dolls, and there can be a hockey playing doll. When I was growing up, the closest thing to an athlete Barbie that I ever saw was like a cheerleader that I ended up getting from my aunt. And so to be able to have that was pretty special and a huge moment.
So if hockey is not the sum total of who you are, who are you?
I am a lot of things. I really don't want to put myself in a box. I want to allow myself the flexibility to be whoever I want to be. And I understand that who I am today is so different than who I was at 22 years old when I made my first Olympic team. Is so different than who I was at 15 years old when I was trying to make Team Canada's under-18 team for the first time. And so we're constantly evolving and constantly changing, and understanding that it's totally okay to be more than one thing.
The average male professional hockey player is usually asked probing questions about getting pucks in deep or how the power play went. Do you ever get tired of having to answer the kinds of questions I've asked you today about all these bigger issues?
Definitely. 100% I do. But I think that it's been so important because we have to share a story and we have to continue the movement. And it's important for the next generation of female athletes. And so to be able to speak about this is so important. And now being a professional hockey player, I'm seeing the other side of the glass, and I am answering questions about getting pucks in deep and what's going on with our power play and why we're not being successful. Like Toronto media, they're kind of rough. So it's great. I think it's great. Now I get to answer questions about both, and I hope one day, you know, young girls who are in my position are just talking hockey.
So they'll talk hockey to you now. You're 29 years old in the prime of your career. Think down the road a little bit, 10 years from now. Where do you think you'll be?
Oh, that's the $1 million question. In the last 5 years, I would say, I've continued to dream, but also understand that the possibilities for me are limitless and truly endless. And there are certain things that I never, ever thought that I would do, have the opportunity to do, that I could never even have imagined in my wildest dreams. And so I definitely don't want to put a limit on where I want to go, but I think that I will still be involved in hockey. I'm not sure how directly. I don't see myself in a coaching role or anything like that, but I'm very interested in the business side of hockey, whether that's, top level management, ownership, different things like that. But I also want to be in different areas of life. I want to continue to inspire young people and empower women to be all that they can possibly be, whether that's through sports or other things. I have so many other passions, whether that's fashion or beauty and entrepreneurship. So I have a lot of things that I probably need to streamline, but I'm excited. I think the possibilities are endless.